Well, let's talk a little bit about pocket knives here for a second, because I've got something new to try out here. This is my everyday carry. I really actually like this. This is the Victorinox EVO Grip 18. This one's made in Deluxe, Switzerland. You've probably seen this in a few videos. Pretty standard fare. It's got a one blade nail file, and it's got this really nice pair of serrated scissors that has this bar that acts on the back spring instead of having other types of scissors, but I've got that. Also has the wood saw, which is an excellent wood saw for the size. So this would have evolved from the Wenger lineup, which I have one here for comparison's sake. They went from the Wenger can opener to the Victorinox. Kept the patented Wenger style bottle cap lifter and screwdriver that has this little push lock in it. And on the back side, they got rid of the Wenger awl and went with the Victorinox reamer awl with the sewing eye and the sharpened edge. Phillips driver, scale tools. I've got my tweezers and toothpick, and these nice two-component handles that are surprisingly comfortable and grippy. This is what's in my pocket all the time. I really like this, so it's going back before I forget. But I received, woohoo! Check this out. I was excited about these because I never saw one in real life and wanted to try it. This is the Suiza D08 in red. Interesting packaging here, so open this up. Won this in a contest around Halloween time that Suiza was putting on. So there it is. And what do we have for a tool set on here? Well, the tool set on this, pretty safe to compare this to. If you're a Victorinox user, we've got the Victorinox Deluxe Tinker, sorry, not the Climber. This has the Phillips driver, so that's the Deluxe Tinker. If I call that the Climber in the rest of the video, please disregard it. So it has a can opener, which in Victorinox's case is also a screwdriver for Phillips and slotted. We've got our, in Victorinox's case, our bottle cap lifter, screwdriver, wire reamer bender, or not reamer, sorry, stripper bender. It's not sharp, so to strip wires, you can either nick it with your knife first, or if your knife is thin enough, put the wire through here and drop the blade on it, spin it around, Bob's your uncle. So that's our opening layer. Victorinox's scissors have this little leaf spring in here which can sometimes break. I've received a few used ones in my collection that were a little bent up or a little weak, but I've never broke one, but it is possible. And just straight plain edges on here. This isn't a serrated blade. And of course, we've got our little small blade, or some people call that a pen blade. These are both flat grind spear point blades. This one needs a little TLC apparently. On the back side, we've got that reamer awl with a sewing eye, Phillips driver, and I think it's 91 or 92 and later. Most of the models with the scissors have this parcel hook or multi-purpose hook. It's actually a pretty handy little tool. Key ring in this particular case, and scale tools again, your tweezers and toothpick. So that's the Victorinox Climber. This one is in a 91mm platform. Back in the old days you could get these in 84mm as well, but good luck finding those. And then the Wenger version. This is an Evolution model, so this has those scales similar to what I carry every day, except they don't have the grip component inlaid on them. But similarly speaking, for a tool set, we've got Wenger's can opener, which is super nice. I like these. You can use this as a secondary blade for a lot of different things as well, because it's sharpened, but you don't have that screwdriver function. Not going to cry about that though. Wenger's screwdriver, cap lifter. I don't know if you'll see it on the camera, but you can force that in and out. It locks up when you put pressure on it and won't close on your fingers, but it only locks in that straight ahead direction. Wenger's spear point blade, which has a little more belly than the Victorinox. You'll find the Victorinox is a little more straight along here. This one has some more belly, still flat grind, great steel. Instead of the small blade, this is one thing I like about Wengers. They don't all have this, but a lot of them do. And my first Swiss Army knife had a nail file. I could be biased, but once you've had a nail file, it's kind of hard to go back. So I've got a nail file with a nail tool. Can in a pinch use this for light duty Phillips driving if you didn't have the Phillips driver, if you had the corkscrew. But this one has the Phillips driver. And this is interesting. So Wenger's awl or reamer, punch, whatever you want to call it, was never really sharpened for the most part. And it doesn't have a sewing eye, but still a super handy tool. I've really enjoyed carrying Wengers. And to compare scale tools, with the Victorinox, your scale tools are on the outside of the scales here. With the Wenger, you can actually reach on the inside edge of the scale, so you can see the little edges that we grab into are facing inboard, and people call these inboard scale tools sometimes. I really like them because they can't snag on your clothing or your pocket or anything. I've never lost one out of a Victorinox, but the possibility exists. So 91mm, Wengers are 85, and the Deluxe collection Victorinoxes are 85 still. And then we've got this guy. Looks a fair bit longer than 91, eh? So we looked at the tools in these. Why did we look at those? Because we're looking at a similar tool set in this, albeit in a fairly different layout. So, if we're talking pocket knives, we'll talk about the blade here first. It's a fairly wide blade all the way down, and notice that it doesn't really follow in straight line with the knife. There is this curve which can make slicing a little better on tabletops and cutting boards, things like that. But it might make things a little different if you're used to slicing with say a hammer grip like this. You might be inclined to tilt this back a bit to get that nice slicing angle. And it may irritate your wrist a little bit, but personal. This one locks. So if you're in the UK or some other place where you're not allowed to carry anything useful, probably a no-go for you outside of your house and camping. Has a liner lock here, so to disengage it, similar to some of the newer Swiss Army knives. Keep in mind, this is just a Swiss knife. This is not a Swiss Army knife. It was never approved for use in the Swiss Army. Anywho, you can see this liner lock here. If I push on the Swiss cross, it disengages that, and I can bring the blade back down and close it. It's got pretty good walk and talk on the blade. Now this side, it doesn't have a small blade or a nail file opposite. What it does have is an inline reamer all with sewing eye. Now it's probably a little shorter, it looks like. Yeah, definitely a little shorter overall length than, say, the Victorinox. As far as the working length of it, the sharpened part, it's pretty much identical, so blade length per blade length. But it's got a pretty small sewing eye. I haven't used that yet. This is just basically like a tabletop review unboxing, so we'll put it to the test here over time. That's the reamer eye, and if that looks familiar to anybody, it's probably because you've seen something somewhat similar on Victorinox's Alox 93mm knives. So if you've got a pioneer, in this case I've got a soldier or a farmer, electrician, something like that, that has that inline reamer. Yeah, so this one's designed to cut turning counterclockwise, and this one's designed to turn clockwise. I kind of like this. We'll see how it holds up long-term strength-wise, but I do like the idea of that. I always like that on the Alox knives. The can opener also looks familiar, but not exactly the same. So you've got a screwdriver here, which doesn't have the world's sharpest edges, but we'll see how that works as we use it. And we've got the section here that actually pierces the top of the can. One thing you're probably noticing on these tools, instead of having nail nicks, they have holes all the way through them. So theoretically, I guess this could be opened ambidextrously. Let's see here if I'm coordinated enough. Yeah. This one has a half stop, like the Victorinox, so you can get a fair bit of torque on screws this way, probably just as much, if not more, than the tool can handle. Our fully open position. Seems like they have this edge set up so that as you turn the knife, things aren't walking around in a circle or wobbling or anything. It keeps things flat and true, which is great. It also has the wire bender, reamer, stripper, insert various names here. We have on the back side another Phillips driver, and when we look at the Phillips driver, the profile on it seems to be about the same angle as what's on my Wenger, which is similar to the Victorinox as well. Heard rumors on the internet of these maybe not grabbing quite so well, but we'll see how it works. There's a bit of a flat spot on this side here, so I don't know if the camera will pick that up. Yeah. Scale tool. So interesting, this one doesn't have a toothpick. I guess you could use a knife to make a toothpick out of just about anything in the real world, and it'd probably be more hygienic. I like to use the toothpick just for cleaning the tool out itself, but what it does have, this is like the evolution of Wenger's inboard tweezers. Now I've read that these are fantastic tweezers. Let's see if this will focus here. So they've got a point that they come to, they're sharpened towards the inside edge, so they should work really well. Next time I get a splinter, we'll find out. And what makes this different than SWIZA's in the past, and what makes me compare it to the Climber and this EVO here with the scissors? So this, once again, this is the D08. There's also the D07, which is identical except it has a corkscrew, but what makes these so interesting are these scissors. They're almost like a shear. Don't have a whole lot of time on these yet, but I am kinda on the fence about them. They do stow away fairly well in here. Not the world's best walk and talk, but pretty decent. Just let me grab some paper here and I'll show you a few things that I may not enjoy about these as much. Alright, well, this is just a picture of a Jeep set up for camp, and I drew for my life a while back. So we'll use this locking blade here. Quick little test, see how it cuts. It's 2 layers of paper. Actually wasn't too bad. I'm so used to just closing these. That's one thing you'll need to remember, that this is 2-hand closing, so a lot of times, well, I mean, you can push the button down and probably close it against your leg. But there's a lot of times with my regular Swiss Army knife, I enjoy that quick deployment and then putting it back. As quick as you can get without a one-hand opening. But now the scissors. When I first got this knife, of course it doesn't come with an instruction booklet like actually Victorinox comes with for a lot of their models for some of the different tools, but I was holding the scissors like this. So let's say I got my little piece of paper here. If I hold it that way on the whole length of the scissors, it's actually not too bad right now. Kind of awkward though. And if you start down here, it's not too bad. But if I was to start up here, yeah, so sometimes it'll fold that edge over. What you need to be conscious of is that this bottom one, you should have some pressure putting it this direction, and the top one should have pressure going in this direction. If we look at it, it has these nice little grooves in here. If I put my finger and thumb on those and kind of press these blades towards each other, it seems to cut a little better. It actually cuts through that pretty quick. These seem to be getting better the more I use them, so they might have had to break in or set up, I'm not sure. They're not serrated, like I say, but if you're used to Wengers, some of these features are going to look familiar. See this little hole inside the scissors with the pin mounted in there? And as I use them, you may or may not see that on the camera, but the back spring goes up and down. That is pretty darn similar, in theory at least, to Wenger scissors, which are still on the Deluxe line. And they have that same little window in there with a pin. And why do I bring that up? Well, if we look at the tang stamp on this Wenger, don't know if you'll see that in the camera or not, but it says Wenger Deluxe Switzerland Stainless. Deluxe is the city where these are made, and it is where the Deluxe lineup from Victorinox. So Victorinox bought out Wenger years ago. This one has Deluxe on the Tang stamp as well. That's where these come from. And according to the little bit of research that I've done, people that were behind Wenger, SWIZA's been making watches for a long time, but I don't know who decided to get in the knife market. If the people from Wenger approached SWIZA, or if SWIZA is like, hey, all of a sudden a few of you are unemployed, how'd you like to come here and make knives? I don't know, but it's interesting. Who knows if this at some point naturally would have evolved into that had Wenger been allowed to continue on and had enough business to do so. So it's made in Deluxe. Length on it, you can probably look this up online. I can't remember. I want to say 95 or 97, somewhere in there. But the Soldier is 93 millimeters in length. We'll butt these up, and it looks like I've probably got 3 or 4 mil difference in there. So if you're American, just, I don't know what that is. But for the rest of the world using the metric system, I'd say you're probably looking at 95 to 97 millimeters in length. So it is a bit longer. If you're used to the Victorinox, it's going to be a little bit longer than that. Width-wise, works out to about the same. If you've got a Wenger with EVO scales, yeah, same thing. It works out to about the same width. Ergonomics. So it's nice. The only backspring tools we have are in this case the Phillips driver, but if you had the corkscrew, it would be back here as well. You don't have an awl back here to worry about. Parcel hook, which is great if you have it, but if you don't, you're not going to cry about it unless that's something you use all the time. Curve shape is interesting when I've got the blade deployed. With the scissors here, I might develop a hotspot if I was doing some real hard work, but I don't use these particularly often for hard work. If I know I'm going to be doing any real carving or heavy cutting, I'm going to have a sheath knife for that. The idea of a pocket knife, especially a Swiss Army knife, or in this case a Swiss pocket knife or Swiss Army style knife, maybe we'll coin that phrase, is to have something all the time on you. I've got a little mark on the side here. We'll see how these hold up. It's almost like a soft touch, so it's not squishy per se, but it's interesting texture. Like if you were to use, let's see, maybe like a silicone oven mitt or cookie sheet or something like that, it doesn't have that sort of give that the silicone has, but it has that tactile sort of feel. That's just kind of interesting. Another thing I guess that's kind of neat about these nail holes as opposed to nail nicks, especially if you're a collector and buy a lot of used knives, you know that nail nicks can get nasty. Dirty, nasty. So trying to clean these out. If it's your own knife, I guess you're not as worried, but picking up a knife that you don't know where it's been or what it's done, it's always in the back of my mind when I'm cleaning it that it's kind of gross. With these, pretty easy to clean this out. Soap and water. The oil that it came with seems quite similar to the oil that would come on Victorinox knives, and in the future I'll probably just use straight mineral oil on it like I do on the rest of my knives. If you look at a traditional Swiss Army knife, we'll open up on the two of these here. So your liners nowadays, probably since I don't know, the 50s or the 60s, others would know better, you would have aluminum liners in here, which are great for lightweight, but they can corrode like anything else, especially in a warm, humid environment like your pocket, and if you happen to live somewhere with a salt environment like around the coast, those can corrode. It's not rust, but they still corrode. I have noticed this seems a little heavier. I know it is bigger, but it also has stainless steel liners, which is kind of cool if you're into that. See if we can get that to flash the camera there, maybe. Yeah. So the same metal that your tools are made out of, or quite similar at least, is used for liners, which also means you shouldn't have as much problems with the dissimilar metals with corrosion in between them, so that's kind of interesting. Come in quite a few different colors and patterns. You can get quite an assortment of wild looking colors. They're a little more flashy than the Victorinox, even in their standard red. I went with red because it's a Swiss knife, why not, right? Pretty traditional and pretty easy to find. They come in camouflage patterns. You can get them with the pin-up girls if you're into that. I wouldn't be too inclined to have a picture of a lady on my knife, but that's totally up to you and your morals, I guess. That's it. So this, like I say, is not a review long-term by any means. I mean, we can compare the scissors real quick here now that we have paper. So we have the Victorinox. Let's say we want to cut across that same sheet of paper. They do cut quite well. And I'm not saying this is the only way to do it, but to me this is the right way, to have your thumb on the bar. Now this one's catching up a little bit. After cutting the paper, it feels like there's some fibers here. Yeah, that's all that was. But these are usually so sharp. Once you get a cut started, just like good scissors, you can push that all the way across. Victorinox, Wenger. The serrations are nice because you'll have times if you try to cut a heavier material like some plastics or maybe aluminum sheet or something like that. These are pretty wild scissors. A lot of people don't like them, but I think they're great. Keep in mind that they're going to move in relation to the knife. The Victorinox ones don't, just the nature of the beast. But the serrated, obviously you're not going to be able to push it through the paper. You have to cut it or shear it every time. But if you're cutting something that wants to maybe be pushed out of the scissors, those serrations will grab onto it and allow that to stay in there. And they're apparently self-sharpening. Don't know how true that is, but interestingly enough, I've never had a dull pair of these, so could be why. So that's that. As I use it more, I'll probably take little clips here and there of it in use. Maybe we'll spend a day in the bush with it, and then we'll do a long-term review. So that's just an unboxing and quick going over. I say quick, this is probably going on for almost 20 minutes now. So thank you, SWIZA, for sending this out. It's great that they put on a contest there to try get their product out. Hopefully have more people use it, and if there's good feedback they can make use of, then great. So we'll see you folks next time here from the Northwest Territories. Stay tuned.